Like Scarface, guess who's Bizak? Welcome back to Politics for the Culture. I'm your host, Senator Dwight Bullard. Merry New Year. Happy New Year. Happy Kwanzaa. It's been a long time since we've been back together here on the show. Last time we were on the show, we were talking about going to Wakanda. I hope you've been there. Hope you've stamped your passport. We had so many great things going on towards the end of last year. Happy to be back with you in 2023. Really just talking about politics for the culture. Politics for us, by us. Happy to be on the show. This show is going to be a spicy one. We're going to kick it off real strong. And I want to bring in, I really highlight the fact that we have to talk about some things. And so we're going to be talking about taboo subjects that you're a little familiar with or maybe unfamiliar with. And today's no different. Our guest today is a friend, soon to be friend of the show, model extraordinaire, but somebody who has chosen now to use their platform to talk about something that is, again, integral for many of us, but oftentimes we don't talk about, and that is sexuality, body positivity, and all things like that. And so I want to bring onto the show, again, someone I've known for quite a while now, but is now going to be a friend of politics for the culture, Iyanna James-Stephenson, a.k.a. Iyanna the model. Welcome to Politics for the Culture, Iyanna.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. And so I kind of gave a little bit of a prelude, but I've had the honor and privilege of seeing you now use your platform over the last year plus, bringing on different guests to really kind of delve into the topic of sexuality, but from a very kind of uniquely Black perspective. Would like to start off with really kind of asking the question, what made you kind of venture into these kinds of conversations?
Yes, I feel like I always have these conversations and I just don't have them publicly. So the first impetus to me to have these conversations on a public platform was because I was talking about this stuff all the time. And when I would have some of these conversations with certain people, they would let me know that this is just not something that they talk about, or they've never heard about it, or no one ever said it in a particular light that I might have said it. And so it just gave me the idea to, just bring it to the forefront. I've always been very comfortable being, I guess, put on the chopping block for the betterment of education and, dismantling myths and just putting more positivity for whatever it is out there. I consider myself a healthy relationship advocate. I feel like relationships are everything that extends from how you connect with yourself to other people. And I think sex is no different. So I'm just continuously connecting and growing and understanding how people have great relationships with themselves and others. And I think that that should be healthy in the subject of sex.
So let's delve a little bit more into kind of your trajectory and career. So as all of your social media handles say, you are a model. You've done photography, you've done runway. What is it about, when we think about the notion of being a model, it is the use of your body to deliver a product, to kind of tell a story, right? How did you get into that? How has kind of your own self-identity developed into who you are and what you're talking about?
So I think that most plain and simply, I wanted to model because I never really got a chance to when I was younger. My mother had always been told oh my God, I'm one of three girls. I'm the middle child. And my mom was always told oh my God, your girls are so, they're so cute. They should model. And she would just and I got no time or money for that. So we never did. I ended up going to school at Mount Holyoke College in Massachusetts. And when I was there, upon my graduation, I was like, maybe I should actually try to pursue this. For me, it was just the idea of a dream at first that I had never really pursued. But I finished my education before I did anything. So went to college. I ended up going to South Korea for a year, which is bizarre for a lot of people. But I was teaching English there for 12 months. And then upon my contract ending in South Korea, I ended up by word of mouth doing my first like fashion photography there in the country in Seoul. I was in the southern region, but I went to the capital. And I just loved it. I just loved like everything about it. I love like just kind of like the aesthetics, I guess, maybe the superficiality of it. Like, oh, like people do my makeup and carry my dress. Like, this is cool. I could do this. Um, I think that it coincides with my personality and who I am and my identity because I always grew up performing. So I was always in the arts. I was always doing theater acting. I was always doing drama. I got into dance soon after, um, especially in college. So I think that like the essence of performance is really coincided with modeling and understanding that just who I am as a person, needing a stage, it's not just like, oh yeah, I want to be seen. It's like, no, I feel like I need to be seen. I feel like I need to be on a platform of expression, kind of led me down that road. I think being in South Korea was not only very interesting, but very solidifying in who I am, speaking about identity, because it's also the most alienated I've ever felt. So there was an essence of like being in a space that no one could ever understand you. I could speak full blown Korean and no one will ever understand me, even though they can understand the language that I'm speaking is because of who I am and where I come from and how I look. So there's nothing in a homogeneous society that's going to allow me to assimilate. So the only thing I could do is be myself. And I think that solidifying more of who I am just made me feel like I understood myself more than I ever had. So by the time I came back to America, um, it was really for me about community and freedom. I think that's just like the two words that kind of spoke out to me. The two words that spoke out to me in my comfort in South Korea, where I could have stayed there another 5 years and would have been completely happy and fine and flourishing just because I felt like those two things was very eye-opening for me and they kind of like settled into what I thought life was all about and what I should be like pursuing. So by the time I got back to the States, I just felt like I knew who I was. I felt like I understood my purpose, and I felt like being on a platform of showcasing, you know, freedom and showcasing comfort and showcasing progress and positivity were things that worked for me. And it just so happens that performance is a way that I do it very well that I think speaks to who I am. So I would say that's probably how I kind of do it.
Well, it would seem to me that the ability to be expressive, the ability to perform, also introduced you to this cohort of folks that became kind of your first set of interviewees, if you will, right?
Mm,
So I'm curious in terms of the exploration of this, uh, you know, delving into finding out how people operate, how people choose to live their life. What have been some of the aha moments for you? What have been some of those
mm.
things that kind of going into this experiment, you're coming out of it like realizing like, oh wow, I didn't realize folks were choosing to express themselves in this way or choosing to operate in this way. What have been some of those kind of like moments that you've experienced during this process of interviewing friends and now friends of friends about their sex lives?
Yes. So my podcast is called Sex Talk, and it has been running for like about a year. I took a hiatus for the last couple months in my, official move to New York, but I'm definitely going to bring it back. I really want to do it live. I did one live earlier this year in the spring, and it was amazing. Um, so with Sex Talk, I really wanted to showcase the ideas that I was having personally before I brought people on. So I think that in my growth in understanding sex, understanding sexuality, understanding different things about the subject, even learning on my own, watching shows on Netflix like The Principles of Pleasure or Sex, Love, and Goop, or even the Goop Lab in their episode about sex, different things like that were not necessarily Black focused, but they were very sexually educative. And I think that meeting more people and understanding that their idea of sex had a lot more to do with just the regular idea or notion of penetration. It gave me like a bigger sense of what it actually was. And so talking to other people was just my way of finding out, how do other people think about this, and how would they be able to answer certain questions that they're never asked about this subject that no one really wants to talk about publicly. The biggest takeaways that I've gotten over the last year was that people are much more intentional about sex than what mainstream perceives. Um, Even the misconception of the sexualized body in connection to someone's sexual life. I think that there's this idea that there is this continuity between how someone shows up and what they're doing in their private life, which is just not true. It's maybe there was a sense of that used to be true, but I don't ever think that it really, was true. I think that there was some connections, but there wasn't really any causation and anything that people were assuming of folks. So I think that when it comes to, what you wear, or, like who you're hanging around or where you go to party, a lot of things do have to do with, what you might be doing privately, but they could also have nothing to do at all with those things. And then further, people are very, very connected to themselves in ways that people don't usually speak about. And I think that like having these conversations, which I've had maybe like over 20 of these conversations at this point, really only one of them was off in terms of this person probably hadn't delved deep enough into themselves to be able to answer questions of depth about themselves in their sexual lives. Um, and those things have not only been enlightening, but also eye-opening, not only for me, but I think the audience as well.
So, kind of in that same vein, thinking about that, why do you think it's important for, especially our community, to have more in-depth conversations about sexuality, be a little more open? I know, like when I think about the trajectory of Black people in this country, sex has been weaponized, right? I mean, going back to the times of slavery, you had things like breeding farms, and we know that there was a defined rape culture. So not talking about sex, trying to be very kind of closed mouthed, at least, about what sexuality is a protective measure. But as we now kind of sit in the 21st century, why do we need to be having more of a conversation about these things and be a little more open and expressive about what we're going through, how we're feeling, and what we're doing?
Mm-hmm. So I feel like when it comes to any part of yourself, it has to be expressed. It's very simple, but that is the true definition of freedom. So if you're thinking of like our people in particular, I've like the notion and the idea and like the conceptualization of freedom is like what we've, always been fighting for. And there's different ways to fight for it. And in my opinion, and also in my passion and what I believe is my purpose, I think that opening your mind to showcase, opening your mind to understand who you are, and then be able to showcase and express all of who you are is one of the ultimate ways that you can be free and also express freedom and also find freedom for yourself. So that's first and foremost. But I also believe that there's this idea that when you fear something, you should hide from it. And the misconception, miseducation, and also just like the omission of education is one of the ways that people can not only continue to be weaponized, but also to be controlled and coerced, and um, be able to have an idea that is general. So they're downloading from what's mainstream as opposed to what's personal. And that can be bad, and it has always been bad in many ways. Just because if you don't really have intention of what you're doing or how you're doing it, then you're always going to be following a robotic or this idealistic way that people say that you should be doing something that has nothing to do with you. So I just think that when it comes to us as a people, it is a part of our liberation. And I don't know if people understand that. I think that people see it as a problem, which in many ways, because it is weaponized and has continued to be weaponized, it can be. But people's idea of dealing with a problem is often to shun the problem, to shame the problem, and to act like it's not there, which only exacerbates the problem. So I think when it even going down to the idea of like, you had a child and you sheltered this child because you didn't want this child to know anything. You didn't want them to know about drugs and alcohol. Then they go to college and they go buck wild and they decide to drink a lot and smoke a lot and then flunk out of college. And it's like your idea to have them elevate is basically a double-edged sword, because you're doing things in order to protect them, but you don't educate them. You think that shadowing them and closeting them is the way to protect them, and that's never the way to protect anybody. You should always protect people with information. So I just think that understanding and enlightening people with information is the only way to truly liberate.
Definitely appreciate that. So, kind of going back to some of the expressive ways that you've chosen to operate, we mentioned your modeling career and that trajectory. I know that you've also kind of delved into burlesque a little bit. And so, we have this kind of conversation happening out in the ether about what it means to be overtly or covertly sexual. So you have folks both being critical of the Janelle Monáes and Megan Thee Stallions for choosing to express themselves in that way. Also being critical of the Lizzos of the world for being what I view as being very body positive, right? Here's a larger woman who's saying, enough is enough. I'm going to be out in the world as I am. What advice would you give to people, both men and women, who want to become a little more expressive, maybe have thought about doing burlesque, doing pole classes, but have kind of held themselves back because they feel as though, because of the way they look or the way they show up in the world, that they should not? What's the advice you would want to give to those folks?
Mm-hmm. I tell people this all the time. There's certain things that you do that you gain the confidence for and then you do it. And there's other things that you do first and then you get the confidence for later. And those are some of those things. Like, you're never really going to understand what you need to perform in those ways until you finally do it. And if you can find an environment that's inviting, that's supportive, that's community-based, that is encouraging you and enlightening you and making you feel good when you're doing it, even when you are scared, you can continue to be courageous enough to complete those tasks and do those things that will help you find more of yourself, and help you be more confident for who you are. When it comes to burlesque, for example, there's a lot of people that are just like, oh, I don't really know. And over the course of the 3 years I've been doing it, but really more particularly the last 2 years, which I have delved into it more intensely, I have seen burlesque sisters go from just being the kitten, which is the women on the stage who usually just help with picking up the different items for the performers, to full out having shows for themselves and producing for themselves and performing for themselves. And that transition was one of the scariest for them, that they couldn't even fathom. They running in and out on the stage was something that they were comfortable with, but being present and being seen and being observed and absorbed onto the stage was something that was completely and totally frightening. So I think that because there was a lot of support, they were able to do it. But you don't have to wait until you are confident to do it if you have a good environment of support and love that, not only, I guess, allows you, but makes you feel good about trying something that you're scared to do. Um, you should always do something, when you're scared. There's certain things that I do that I know I'm scared of, and so I do it. Like I think that challenge of courage is something that should be practiced more often, especially in the sense of finding out how you can feel more free. You should definitely just take those leaps of faith, I think.
Definitely appreciate that. It wouldn't be politics for the culture if I didn't ask kind of a culture question, a little tongue in cheek, a little playful. And so when we think about sensuality, sexuality, what are 3 songs that make you feel sexy? Would love for you to give those 3 songs to folks, whether they be old school, new school, off the beaten chart. Doesn't have to be your top 3, but just 3 that come top of mind for you when you're feeling your sexiest.
That's interesting. There is this, I'm like a playlist lady. So I have like 25 playlists. And one of the playlists that I have is called Slow and Sexy Vibes. And the first song on that playlist, which, I always go on that playlist and I click shuffle. But one of the songs that I always just press straight out is called Phone Me. Let me see who the artist is by. I think his name is Inu something. Let's see. Sexy Vibes. First, Phone Me by Che Ecru. CheEcru. I just really love very slow, like melodical, cool music. Something that makes me feel like I want to move to, because since I am a movement artist and a performer and someone who dances, when I do listen to songs, I think I automatically think about how I would move to them. So I like to listen to a lot of things that I would want to move to or freestyle to, or, I started doing pole dancing recently, to pole dance to, and things like that. So that's one of them. Let me see. Nobody Has to Know by Cranium is another one. I'm half Jamaican, so shout out to that. And then, I also like It's a Vibe by 2 Chainz. I would say that's like one of my favorite 2 Chainz songs. And also Janae Aiko, who is a fellow Pisces like myself, is on that, making me feel really good about her verse. So I would say those are top 3.
Oh, I love those. And those recommendations, I'm sure folks are going to take as they're dancing in their mirror, thanks to your advice.
Yes.
Want to thank you, Iyanna, for being on the show, for being a guest and really kind of delving in to why it's important for us to be our whole selves all the time. When we think about, again, politics for the culture, a lot of people try to get and put politics in a box, but you're really opening folks' minds to the notion of things that unfortunately have been too politicized for far too long. So I want to thank you for being a guest on the show, and hopefully we'll bring you back to have some more in-depth discussions once I'm sure questions bubble up after this show. So thank you again for being on Politics for the Culture.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. I actually studied to be a lawyer for a very long time, like 8 years between high school and college. And one thing that we learned in college was the personal is political. And I feel like I just always took that with me. So with the idea of like putting politics in a box, like the personal is political, your personal life is politics. And the way that you deal with that, and the way that you act with that, the way that you, handle that is going to be a political fight. So don't think that just because it has to do with you, it's not, in the fight for politics and your rights and freedom. So a pleasure. Great to be here. Thanks for having me. And yeah, I'll be back whenever
No doubt about it. Enjoy the NYC. Hopefully during the cold weather months, you're coming back down to Miami.
I know.
and fight that feeling. So once again, Politics for the Culture, bringing you cultural topics, laced over with politics for us, by us, but in a way that we can understand it and make it a little more palatable. So again, thanks to Iyanna, the model. They can find you on all social media platforms if they need to check you out. But I'm looking forward to your upcoming new conversations and sex talk as well. And hopefully, my life's an open book. Let's have that discussion. Let's do it. I'm down. So I'm looking forward to coming on your platform as well.
I'm down. Yes.